All right, again, welcome everyone to our fourth Candid Talks with Grad session on TA stressors. This is a short presentation that I'll be handing things off to Megan to talk about her experiences with TAing and some of the stressors that students might face and some strategies to overcome them. So just quickly, I've noticed being a TA myself over the years at UW, of course, TAing can be stressful, especially when you're a new teaching assistant and you're a new graduate assistant. And sometimes it can feel like, you're not really prepared to do it. And it's just kind of, you're thrown into the deep end. And there's just so much going on that it can definitely cause some stress. And ends up being quite a large part of the graduate student experience, not necessarily just the stress itself, but just like being a TA in general is a large part of being a grad student for most of us. So let's talk about quickly just some of the stressors that people face while being a TA at UW or any of the universities or any school really. So some students can come across, conflict with students. So if all of you are TAs, I'm sure there's probably been a situation where, you've done all your grading and a student approaches you and they're like, oh, I didn't get the grade I was expecting, but I deserve this grade. Why did you grade it this way? And then sometimes they're cool with it if you explain why the grade was given, and then other times it could be a bit more challenging to work out the situation. So dealing with conflict with students can be a challenge. Another thing that I've come across is for myself is, feeling like you don't know what you're doing. I find that stresses me out. I know it kind of varies from department to department, but I found in the past for myself, there have been circumstances where I've been thrown into some courses as a teaching assistant that I didn't know anything about, because my field is or my department is just so broad reaching that there's just been some situations where I've had to dip my toes into marking and TAing for classes where I was not didn't feel ready to do that. So that can cause some stress. Another thing might be, juggling work relationships with instructors and other TAs. There's all these people involved, and all of these things kind of require some relationship building and making sure, everyone keeps the peace and that there's positive relationships and no one's being taken advantage of, and everyone that's having a good kind of experience of the situation. Another thing that can cause stress, balancing TAing with other responsibilities. With all of us, as graduate students, we have so much on our plates. Not only are we TAing, but, some of us are doing graduate level research, some of us are in courses, some of us are maybe working externally or internally at the university outside of teaching assistantships. Some of us maybe are parents or caregivers. So there's just so much going on, and TAing can kind of add that additional level of stress there in balancing those responsibilities. Another one that I know Megan will also mention is, meeting deadlines. Sometimes throughout the term, it could be difficult to organize everything in a way that you're going to meet all of those tight deadlines. And especially in cases where you have, let's say, 50 students to grade for, and you only have a 2-week turnaround or a 1-week turnaround, it can be challenging to kind of squeeze all that in and make sure those deadlines are all hit so that everyone's happy, but also that you're not super stressed at the same time. Some other things, finances. At UW, they have the 10-hour work week rule on campus. So that could be, challenging to some students that need to be making more money. Last minute placements. I know that that's kind of also something that is dependent on your department. But for some cases, students are kind of, we don't find up our TA shifts until a few days before classes start. And that can also be stressful because you're trying to organize your life and try to figure out what you're doing for the term. So it can be difficult to do those things when you don't necessarily know, when you have to be on campus or when you're going to be grading. So for others, it might be an issue of, finding a TA placement in the first place. So I know some departments and some programs, it's built into your funding package that, in some departments, you're kind of automatically given TA shifts. Whereas in other departments, some graduate students actually have to go apply and get specific TA shifts through application to their department. So everything kind of differs between departments. Some other things, worrying about saying the right thing to students, especially if they're coming to you with kind of a conflict situation, let's say regarding their mental health or something along those lines, and you are worried about saying the wrong thing. You want to help the student as much as possible, but you don't want to say the wrong thing, and that could cause some stress as well. And it's just some other things like learning how to use the systems on Learn from the instructor and TA point of view, aside from being a student, and using whatever other technology or systems that are required in your course that you're TAing. So altogether, all of these things and some of the things that Megan will talk about as well can cause stress as when you're a TA. And today we're going to be kind of talking about those things and what people have experienced. So some resources for TAs on campus, just so you are aware that they exist. We have the Center for Teaching Excellence. They have a TA handbook. They have workshops, training, teaching tip sheets. We have Counselling Services. If you are struggling with your mental health or you want to learn how to better handle situations if a student approaches you with a mental health concern. Counselling Services also offers the Grad Student Community Conversation Circle, which can be helpful. We have other training like more feet on the ground mental health training. Of course, us at the Graduate Student Association, especially in cases if you are dealing with conflict with an instructor or something like that, that you need some sort of advice on how to handle the situation or some advocacy for us to step in and help you if you're being treated unfairly or anything like that. You can, of course, if you're comfortable and depending on your situation, approach your graduate coordinators or department chairs, other instructors, the instructor that you're TAing for. Fellow students. Some other resources are accessibility services, the Office of Conflict Management and Human Rights, the Equity Office, the Student Success Office, Waterloo Learn Help, the Sexual Violence Prevention and Response Office, the Office of Academic Integrity, and the Writing and Communication Center. So there's tons of different resources on campus, but if there's ever a situation where you're like, hey, I'm having this problem, I don't even know where to start on campus, always feel free to reach out to us at the GSA and we can help, figure out what's going on and then point you into the direction of what resources might be available. So that's the end of my spiel. So I'm going to stop my sharing and then I'm going to hand things over to Megan.
Hi, everyone.
Megan, I forgot to ask, are you good to share your slides on your end?
I am. Yeah, I will get those up here. Oh, it says that the host disabled participants.
Let me change that for you. And I'm also using my coworker's Zoom account right now, so that's why the picture does not match the face. All right, there we go.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. It's always a learning experience having to share my screen on Zoom. So hopefully this works, fingers crossed. Okay, so hi everyone. Before I start my presentation, I just want to thank the Graduate Student Association for having me today. I'm super excited to be able to participate in the presentation on TA stressors and kind of share my experience with the topic. So my name is Megan. I'm going into my second year of my Master's of Science in Public Health and Health Systems here at the University of Waterloo with a research focus on global health. So when I started my Master's of Science program, I was offered the opportunity to be a teaching assistant in my first term. When I was offered this position, I remember feeling excited and grateful for the opportunity. But I was also a little nervous. Prior to this opportunity, I didn't really have any experience with being a TA. All I knew about the role from my interactions with previous TAs I've had in my undergraduate degree. So I had a general understanding of what I was going to be doing as the TA, I didn't fully know what to expect. So the class I was assigned to TA was a third-year course that had over 200 students. I remember when I first learned how many students were in the course, I was absolutely shocked and incredibly nervous. However, these nerves were settled once I met with the other TAs I'd be working with and realized that they were incredible and incredibly supportive. And the TA was also very supportive, the instructor is also very supportive and kind as well. So while I was a TA, I found that there were a range of stressors that I had to learn to cope with. First, I noticed I experienced issues with having a heavy workload. While I was a TA, I was also in 2 graduate courses and a graduate seminar. I found that there were periods of time where I would have substantial assignments due in one of my courses, and I'd also have TA deadlines such as submitting grades, providing feedback, or holding office hours. It was definitely an adjustment, and for me, it was pretty difficult to juggle all the responsibilities and deadlines. Another TA stressor that I found myself going through was handling conflict. So personally, I don't enjoy dealing with conflict. And while I was a TA, there were a lot of situations where students may not agree with their grade or they might present issues with the rubric. In these situations, I always found it incredibly helpful to provide students with as much feedback as possible. And one tactic I would recommend is ensuring that students have a copy of the marked rubric if possible, so they're able to see where they lost marks and how they can improve on their next assignment. So lastly, I always noticed that there would be an influx of emails from students the night before an assignment was due or a test. As such, it would kind of make it hard for me to separate my online and offline hours. Especially as a remote online TA, I felt this pressure that if I received an email from a student, I should answer it right away. But it's also important to ensure that you are able to set expectations for the students and let them know that it might take you 24 hours to respond to their questions and concerns. As a TA, you are on call 24/7, and it's important to make sure you're able to make time for yourself and your coursework. I remember I was working on one of my graduate course assignments, and I think it was around 2 a.m. I received an email from a student asking me a question about an assignment rubric. I read through the email and I noticed it wasn't anything urgent and it could wait until the morning for a response. While I felt this internal pressure to answer the email right away, I also thought it was important to finish the coursework I was presently working on. So in order to deal with my stress due to the heavy workload, I really spent time to build my skills in time management, organization, and self-discipline. I found it incredibly helpful to use to-do lists to ensure I was able to stay on track with my grading. I also found it useful to use an Excel sheet to keep track of my students and ensure that they submitted assignments and engaged with the discussion posts. In addition to to-do lists, I also found it useful to use a calendar to place all of my personal course deadlines and my TA deadlines. Having this overview helped me prepare for time periods that were increasingly busy. As I'm sure we've all experienced the midterm season while you're a graduate student, it gets very hectic. And as I mentioned previously, the other TAs I worked with and the professor instructing the course were incredible. I really leaned on them as a support system throughout the term and found it helpful to speak with them if I had any questions or concerns with the rubrics or assignment prompts. I tried to ensure that I reviewed all of the rubrics far ahead of time to ensure I was clear on the requirements and grading process. I also found at the beginning there was a lot of trial and error in terms of what methods worked for me to mark assignments and provide feedback. So I really tried to self-reflect after completing the tasks to see if the method I was using was actually working for me or if there was a more efficient way to tackle those tasks in the future. Overall, I found being a TA a really unique experience, and it taught me a lot about time management and how to provide meaningful feedback. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening through my experience as a TA and how kind of I hope I coped with those TA stressors. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything I discussed throughout my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. So I'm just going to stop the recording now.